Welcome back. Hey.
Welcome back. Hey.
Everybody, welcome to season 4 of Wealthy Wednesdays. And my name is Monica Matthews. I am the owner of Queen Care Products and founder and CEO of Life Enrichment Group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tajiana Ellis, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Life Enrichment Group.
Yes, and if you don't know what Queen Care is all about, our tagline pretty much sums it up. We want people to indulge, engage, and uplift. Indulge in self-care practices that really support optimal health. We want people to engage with one another, which is the whole premise of Wealthy Wednesday. So thank you for being here. And we want to uplift those who are most vulnerable amongst us, thus our work in the community. And so you may ask, what is Wealthy Wednesdays all about? Listen, Wealthy Wednesday is an online health initiative focused on learning and relearning how to properly care for ourselves, because we know that the better we feel about ourselves, the better we're able to treat one another. And so we really envision this time together to consist of sharing information that will really feed our mind, body, and soul, and cultivate our lives in a way that will exude wealth. Okay. And so essentially, we're investing this time in ourselves tonight and taking a moment out of this week to say yes to ourselves. Okay. And so, yeah, we're here and we're ready. And I'm really glad that we're here, Taji. It's really good to see you. Taji, I want you to unmute yourself. And yeah.
Yes. Hey, I'm back. I am so excited. Yes, to see you too, Monica. And I'm excited for everybody here that you all said yes tonight, tuning in, whether you are live or you're watching the replay. There are so many ways to stay connected with us. This show is one of them. But other ways you can stay connected with us is to make sure you like, comment, and share this video. Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit www.queencareproducts.com.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Taji, there's so many ways to stay connected. And in this season, it's really important that we stay connected, y'all. Like, our success depends on one another. So connect with us, build with us. But I want to give y'all a recap though. If you missed the last few weeks, what's been going on at Wealthy Wednesday, we have been joined by our resident therapist, Dr. Jen, we've been processing pandemic realities, really in an effort to release and establish and or reestablish post-pandemic care rituals for ourselves. And what we mean by that is, how many of us have really processed the pandemic? So really just acknowledged, listen, this is what was going on during the pandemic with me. And not only process, but how many of us have really released all that what has happened in the pandemic? Like, we're post-pandemic now and we're just in this new normal, and like we're just going on like those 2 to 3 years didn't happen. So that's what we're about here. And I do want to say that, like, we want to be able to perform at our highest level. And that is really the purpose of this particular season of Wealthy Wednesday. So a little disclaimer, these topics that we are going to be discussing and have been discussing during the season, they're very personal and sensitive and can also be triggering. And so please, 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 you all, take notice to your mental and emotional state during these times, and govern yourself accordingly. If you need to take a break, if you need to turn it off, if you need to revisit it later, if you want to cry with us, laugh with us, Taji and I are here, like bearing all, like really being vulnerable. And that was really important to us this season, to really show another side of us that you may not have seen before, but just really to normalize this thing about connecting with each other and processing through and talking about some of these things to really strengthen our mental health. Okay. So disclaimer, And we know that, like, discussing these topics is really, about having a wealthy life. It's really
Mhm.
about having a healthy mind state, and that leads to having a wealthy life. So, for those of you that missed our episodes on depression and anxiety, listen, Dr. Jen gave us a wealth of care points for us to implement and to combat this. So I want to encourage all of you all to go in our little vault on our Queen Care page and catch up on some of these episodes that we've had, and really take notice to some of these things that our licensed psychologists are giving us to be more wealthy. Okay. But what we got today, Taji?
So today we are going to be discussing grief and loss. As is mentioned, these are heavy topics. These are definitely heavy in nature, but even more heavy when we do not have the proper tools to process through these emotions and feelings. So I'm super excited, as has already been mentioned, that we have a top-notch therapist that will be joining with us shortly. But first, Monica.
Okay, first, as always, we have our question of the day, you all. And so we don't want this to be a situation where we're just yapping and no engagement, y'all. So talk to us. We talk back. So our question of the day, or really point of the day that we want you all to share with us in the comments, is share with us your favorite memory of someone that you lost. Today we're talking about, grief and loss, and we want to really honor those that we've lost by sharing a good memory about them. And this could be someone who's not with us anymore in the physical, or you could be mourning a loss of someone that's still here with us. So share your favorite memory and let's process this together. Taji, do you have a favorite memory of someone that you lost?
I do. I'm going to get more into it very shortly.
Yes.
But what about you?
Yes. I want to share a memory of my auntie Beverly, who I lost during the pandemic. Snazzy auntie, very stylish. And I remember when Kyle was probably like 7 or 8, she bought him this game, and it was just like you couldn't find the game anywhere. It was like this just really it was it at the time. And Kyle kept that game for so long, and I don't know, somehow it got left in California. And she just always loved Kyle so much. And I always remember that game as a token of her love. It's not really about the item, right? It was really about her thought of Kyle and knowing that, like, he's a gamer, like he loves all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I just love how she, took care of him. So that's my favorite memory of my auntie Beverly.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's so good.
Yes. And you know what? We're actually really excited to bring back our licensed psychologist as we unpack this pandemic, because we know so much has happened. So join me, everybody, in welcoming back Dr. Ghynecee Tempo. Okay, Dr. Jen is what we call her. Welcome. Dr. Jen is a licensed psychologist that is passionate about supporting others and improving community well-being. Dr. Temple obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology from Eastern Washington University and her doctorate in counseling psychology from Washington State University. Welcome back, Dr. Jen.
Welcome back.
There we go. I was trying to find my unmute button. Hello. Thank you both for, inviting me back. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, really, I don't know if excited is the right word, but definitely ready to lean in to this conversation about grief and loss today.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get right into it. We have a couple of questions to start this conversation off. So, Dr. Jen, what is your expertise in the area of grief and loss?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I want to say, I think, I've helped people navigate experiences of grief and loss throughout my entire career in providing, therapy. I hesitate to call my work expertise because I don't know how, I don't know too many people that have mastered navigating the grief and loss of others, right? It's something that's not, I don't know if you get more comfortable with it, you get more experience with it. But grief looks different for all people, right? So I think I try to engage in the process and kind of follow what this looks like and feels like for the person that I'm sitting with, that I'm working with, and then, using my strategies, etc., way of just being in the world to help them navigating it. But I would say my experience has really come from both like personal and professional insights and learning. What I try to explain to people is grief is a human experience. It's one of those few things that are collective experiences. We'll experience it, and in one form or another, we'll have to confront it. So it's only natural that it has shown up in my clinical practice.
That's really good. And you kind of spoke to a little bit, but don't know if you want to just dig deeper on like what is grief and how do you identify if you're suffering from it?
Yeah. So, what is grief? First, I would say grief is a response to loss. And I keep it vague like that because response can be anything. But I think, many people associate grief with losing someone you knew or cared for to death. Usually we hear grief, we're thinking like somebody died. But I think earlier, Monica, when you posed the question, you were saying like, even if they're still here. And I love that you said that because I always say you can grieve the living. You can grieve missed opportunities, you can grieve objects, etc. So grief isn't just tied to a physical person, and it's not only tied to the death of a person. I also think grief gets a bad reputation. Even thinking about the question, right? Like we don't have to suffer from grief. Um, Grief can become an insufferable experience when we don't care for ourselves and shift our relationship with it. Um, I this thing that lives rent free in my mind is there was this graphic, and you can find it online, but it's a ball inside of a box, and the ball represents grief, and the box represents our lives. And after a loss, that ball doesn't shrink, right? Like grief stays. I always say it stays. Whatever size ball that is, it doesn't change. But what you do throughout your life is you grow that box. You grow your life to accommodate that experience, and you keep moving forward. So I keep that in my mind and heart, and I think it helps me cope. And when I do share that with folks, I think people really can resonate with that. And I also want to note that grief can bring about laughter, happy tears, and positive emotions. I love, the exercise, the question you just posed to folks, like, what's a positive, happy memory you have? And it doesn't mean that like you don't still feel that, ooh, like I miss that person. Oh, I wish they were here. But it's not this insufferable ball and chain experience, right? So I want to say that like, grief is all things. It's beautiful, it's struggle. Grief can change us. Grief will remain throughout a lifetime, but the living is what's important. How do we live? How do we move forward? But going on that, like on the flip side, how do we know when we're being tied down, when we know that we're grieving in ways that are not helpful? Grief can look differently from person to person. So I always say one of the things that's really important is that you understand your reaction to grief. And how you can do that is to reflect on previous losses. Try to recount how you responded in those moments. So when you engage in this reflective practice, you can essentially have a cheat sheet to refer to when a new loss occurs. But I also want to note that we may not experience all losses the same, right? There's levels to this, which means our responses may vary. So I don't want to push it like this is the one blueprint, but it's helpful. When I think about loss, I know I isolate. I can be really sad. I look to, I'm really into words and writing. So I always look towards like poems or just things out there to really help me articulate my experience and give me some comfort. And I know that's how I respond. So when you can recall that when things do happen, because grief's inevitable, you can check in with yourself and say, is this healthy or not? I would also say, similarly to what I said in the first, when we talked about depression and anxiety, function. When you are not functioning, that is a sign that grief is, I think, a little bit unmanageable for you at that time. If you're not eating, sleeping, you're engaging in self-destructive behaviors, just not taking care of yourself, then it's time for us to have a different conversation.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for just like really, kind of breaking that down in the sense that, it's so many layers to it, and it's not just one thing or the other. It's like both and, right? Like it's also and that, and it doesn't have to be either or. Because I think, like oftentimes, like in society, we kind of think like, oh, it has to be this or that. But in like what I'm hearing you say with grief, that it's all of the above. Like it's not A, B, C, or D. It's like probably E, F, G, So thank you for, voicing that and sharing that actually brings me to my own grief experience that I will share. So yeah, so I definitely I haven't been experiencing grief ever since the loss of my father. He's still my forever inspiration. He was my best friend. To me, he was the best daddy in the world. And one thing that I did hear you say too is that sometimes we even grieve, before, like as people are living in. I didn't realize that one of my biggest fears was losing my dad until I lost my dad. And so losing him really shook me, and I experienced a pain and a heartbreak that I've never, ever have felt before. I recall just some things that kind of, now looking back, really was a part of that experience. So, the things that I was kind of like processed through is the final text that I received from my dad the final text that I text my dad, was July 20th, 2021. And at that time, I didn't know it would be the last time. And then the very next day, I received a call that my dad was taken by ambulance. It was taken to ICU due to having an extreme case of COVID-19 and pneumonia, and he was put on a ventilator. And they told me that they weren't sure he would make it through the night. So, of course, I took a flight to California, that's where I'm from, to go see and visit my dad. And after 3 weeks, 6 cold blues, other health complications, all connected to COVID-19, I lost my dad on August 14th, 2021. So experiencing the first during my grief process without my dad was really hard. And I was in California at the time, so I didn't want to come back to Seattle for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons was just that comfort with being with my mom and my sister. I stayed with them as long as I possibly could until like that beginning of November of that year. And then even during that first year of the year of first, of experiencing the first of birthdays and holidays and all of that, I traveled back and forth to California just to be with my mom and my sister, so that we experienced a lot of those together. And it definitely did bring like some sense of comfort and, connection. Just knowing that we were the last 3 most important people to my dad before he passed. And so every time I thought of all of the milestones that he would never be here for, it would bring me to tears, and it almost would feel like I lost him all over again. It felt like it was starting over. And I just know I never cried so much in my life, and how there had been days and weeks that I felt so tired, like mentally, emotionally, physically, that I truly had to take it a day at a time, Like we say to take it a day at a time, but I really had to take it a day at a time because even those days felt unbearable. And I felt overwhelmed by every task and every request that I was given. I didn't want to be dependent on for anything. I was just tired. Um, and I had to figure out who I was. And I think Dr. Jen, you mentioned that. Like I had to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be without my dad. I felt like I was finding my voice and I needed to find my voice. And I felt like I was starting over in a lot of ways. And so the weight of grief and the pain of his loss did lead me to some dark places. And it also led me to not taking care of myself, which you also just spoke to, the way I normally would. And it truly did teach me that grief comes in waves and that it is a journey. And for me, if it wasn't for the Lord, my faith, my village, I really don't know. It's been hard. But as you mentioned too, Dr. Jen, about writing, that also is something that God used for me, my poetry, to help like identify and acknowledge like the emotions I was feeling and what was coming up for me. And then also using that same writing and poetry to help me process the grief and process the loss of my dad and all of the experiences that were connected to that. So there's a lot more I could share about like my grief experience, of course. But my hope is in what I have shared today, that it will help others know that they aren't alone and know that you are heard, seen, and loved wherever you are in the grief process. So my final question to you, Dr. Jen, is do you believe grief and loss of a loved one is truly something you can heal completely from? Why or why not?
Ooh. Well, first, I want to say I'm sorry to hear about your loss, and I want to thank you for your vulnerability in this moment, and just your realness and talking about it. I think there's so many gems that you shared. And similarly, I'm like, I could spend a really long time talking about each of those gems and expounding upon it. But I think that's just like the real portrayal, right? The real experience of grief. Um, and so do I believe is it something that you truly heal from or completely heal from? It's a really great question. It's a complicated one. I think in my opinion, I don't necessarily think it's that cut and dry. Like I don't think there's a you healed or you didn't heal from loss. Grief isn't linear and there is no present timeline. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes folks show like the stages of grief, like these are the stages, and people forget to tell you that like it doesn't happen step 1 through 5. You could be very sad. A year later, you could be really pissed off. 3 years later, you could be in a place of acceptance, but then something happens, and then 2 months later, you are bargaining and depressed. So I want to name that like grief is it doesn't work like step 1 through 5. Also, with there's no preset timeline. I always, and this is my own personal philosophy and how I approach this, but like grief is a lifetime thing. You don't, our minds don't forget things that our brains don't. And memories evoke feelings. So, you were naming Taji about like thinking about the things that he won't be here for. And as you continue to move through life, you're going to have these milestones and you're going to be like, wow, what would have been like for him to be here right now. And so I think, grief, it's just this lifetime process, but it, like I said earlier, doesn't have to feel insufferable. And this is why I say, I don't know if it's a heal, like you healed or you didn't. I think you learn to live with it. So, even if the memory evokes happy tears and smiles, that's still grief. We talked about grief not just being this horrible, terrible, bad memory type of thing, but it can also be positive. And like grief is just unexpressed love. And so always think about that. So, it's just a lifelong capacity to love and miss and cherish someone. So I think grief becomes more bearable as we continue to move forward, as we choose to move forward. Thinking about that box, right? That circle of grief, there's no replacement for your father, right? he's that circle, but you're going to continue to have enriching life experiences if you choose to, and you're going to continue to make that box of life bigger, and that piece of grief will be there, same size, same color, same shape, but you have so much life around that. So I think by choosing to move forward, we learn how to live with it, and we create our own relationship with the loss. And I always think about it like it might leave a scar, but it won't feel like the gaping wound that it initially was, right? Scars remind us. I don't know how many of you all look at your scars and be like, okay, I slid down and I did that, da, 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 but it doesn't hurt. You acknowledge it, you see it, you know it's there, but it's not the same pain.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you so much for just sharing that. I think that is I think that's a really great way to look at it and just really kind of put into words like that experience, like you said, like I mentioned, like, you know, just like thinking about when I start thinking about, wow, he won't be here for this, he won't be for that, and he won't ever meet this, you know, all of those things, right? So yeah, I think that is a great way to look at it, to know that those things that is something that is going to be with me forever, but that's just another reminder of how important he was to me. So of course I'm going to remember, and like of course I'm going to still be sad because he was amazing. So yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, I just, you know, thank you, Taji. Want to say thank you as well for, you know, sharing that, you know, I loved your dad as well. And I actually shared something from his page today.
Oh
It was in my
wow.
Facebook memories, and I'll share that with you after this. But
Yes.
he was very important to me as well. But Dr. Jen, I really like what you said about choosing to move forward,
Yeah.
right? And I'm thinking about it in the context of grieving someone who is still here. So, for example, you know, during the pandemic, I ended a decades long relationship. That person is still here. I still see the person. I'm still, you know, and it feels like it brings me right back to, you know, all of the feelings and emotions and the whole thing around the loss of that relationship, but it was a necessary loss and it was one that I chose, but I'm still grieving it. And it's so
Mm.
weird because it brings up all of these emotions, but I don't feel like I ever chose to move forward from that. Cause I feel like I'm
Mm.
still in that. I'm still right there with that grief, like it just happened yesterday. And it's like, no, I do need to make a choice to move forward past that. Like it's
Mm.
it's over. Like, you know what I mean? And for my good, right? So I really appreciate you saying that because it is a choice to say, yes, this happened. And yes, this is no longer for whatever reason, right? Um, and yes, I feel this way. Yes, it hurts. You know, like you were talking about, like acknowledging these things, like naming these things. Yeah, I feel mad, I'm hurt, and just all of this.
Yeah.
Um, but that last piece is so important. But I'm choosing to move forward. You know what I mean? And like Taji said earlier, day by day, step by step. Some days for me, it's minute by minute, literally. You know, and I think that choice thing is really important. And you know, also something I was thinking about is that saying that I cannot stand, and it's, you know, time will heal all things and all wounds. Okay, this time is going by, and I still feel the same way. We have to
Yeah.
put some things, you know, in place for that. It's not just
Exactly.
10 years and not do the work on,
Mhm.
you know, on it. You know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and I'm sitting with that. Whew, I think, well, yeah, time heals all. I think sometimes time can dull the feeling of pain associated with
That's
wounds.
good.
But I think for me, and I was, you know, I recently also lost an important relationship to me, and it still stings. But what I've tried to do recently is like acknowledge that, yeah, it's going to sting. And I don't know when it's not going to sting. I can't
Mhm.
stop it from stinging. But what I can do in those moments, and I've been practicing this thing called, it's an acronym ACE. And it's like acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, come back to your
Mm.
body, and engage in what you're doing. I think some losses evoke trauma trigger responses for us because whatever was going on in that relationship and however it ended, and this could be even with like a physical death, you know, like it was trauma, and trauma is stamped in our brains. I don't know if you all have heard of the book The Body Keeps the Score, but it's, you know, talks about how we encode trauma. And so for me, when I am encountering people and that pain is coming up or situations, I drop anchor. That's what ACE is all about. You drop that anchor. I'm acknowledging my thoughts and my feelings. I'm coming back into my body. Either I'm taking some breaths, I'm walking away, I recite something to myself, and then I engage in what I'm doing. What was I doing? Okay, I'm walking. Where am I walking to? I'm walking to this store. That's what I'm going to focus on. If someone else is with me, I'm going to focus on communicating with them. That's what I'm going to do to center myself, because I'm no longer expecting myself to not feel pain when certain situations arise. And now that I've shifted or started to shift that relationship, I'm much kinder to myself about it. I have no expectation. And I think many of us need to drop the expectation that we get over things, that we don't grieve. I always tell people, if you look at different societies around the world, there's one culture, and I charge my head, not my heart, but, and this might be a little macabre for people, but like every 10 years or so, they dig up their loved ones, redress them, celebrate, party with them, tell stories about them. And that's their grief. That's their love. So I don't think we have to get over things.
Mm,
We just find new ways to make relationships with the loss.
Mhm.
that's real good. Like
That's so
it's
good.
all about like what you make it mean. You know what I mean? Is what I hear you saying. Like, and I love the ACE piece, like
Mhm.
especially the acknowledge piece, because a lot of times we just need to practice like checking in with ourselves.
Yes.
know, like we're not checking in with ourselves enough, like, or we're masking how we really feel. How are you doing? Oh, I'm good. Knowing good and
Yeah.
well you're not. You know what I mean? So really
Yeah.
acknowledging, really, and being real with yourself as to where I'm at. Listen, I'm hurting over this, you know, like, or I'm not feeling so well. But the piece that I really like what you talked about in the C part is like being centering yourself and being, it allows you to be present, you know, and that's the part where like I think is it's really important, right? Because you could be aloof all off over here and you're missing life, you
Mhm.
Yep.
know, the life that you have right now that's important,
Right.
worth it, and you know, all of that. So, you know, thank you for sharing that little tidbit about ACE. I really, really, really like that. And that's a really good tool to
Yeah.
use.
Really good tool.
I know that there's some comments. We had the question of the day or the thought of the day, or you know, engaging with our online peeps out there, and you know, our whole deal question of the day was share your favorite memory of someone you lost, either you know, not with us here physically anymore or still with us. And so let's check some of these comments and see what's going on online with
Yeah.
this. Such an
That's
important topic for sure.
so important. Okay, so we have Tiffany.
Uh-oh, was I okay, got it.
Oh no, were you about to say it?
No, I think nothing, it's okay. I think I have problems with my internet. Listen, we still online. I froze for a second, so
Oh, we didn't
Yeah, I
know.
didn't
So
even see it.
welcome back.
I should have never
Welcome
said
back.
anything. But
Welcome
anyway,
back.
hey Tiffany.
Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany says, why did we use the word loss? My mom's a grief counselor, and she taught me that shouldn't use the word loss. The word loss means someone is lost and that they are coming back.
Mm,
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I seen that. My thought about that is I feel that it what I've learned in practicing this work is that people have different belief systems. And I think for some people, they don't believe that their loved ones leave them, whether they, you know, are spiritual or not, they believe that they're there, there are some people I've worked with have believed they're ever present, guiding ancestors, right? We hear that language. But I've also worked with people who do believe that the connection is lost, and that they don't have maybe a spiritual belief or underpinning that would change that. And so I try to, when I am working with people, respect the term that makes sense for them. So for some people, loss doesn't fit. And for other people, loss does fit. And so I think, Tiffany brings up a good point. And I think this is definitely a viewpoint that people do have. But I also
Mhm.
have, experienced people who that language feels better. And so I would say, kind of a rule of thumb for people is understand how people want to describe their own experience navigating grief. Use the language that suits them if you're supporting them, right? You don't have to ascribe to that viewpoint or belief, but I would say, people conceptualize grief, use the language in ways that make sense for them. So I definitely understand that perspective. I personally do believe in, like, ancestors still being around, ever present, but that's not for everybody. So I would always say check in with language just to see how people respond and what makes sense for them. But yeah, definitely, I appreciate Tiffany for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's real
Thank you for
good.
bringing it up.
Mhm.
That
I
is
am
good.
thinking about
Yeah.
like the relationship that I left. That wasn't a that wasn't a
That's not a loss. That was a gain.
Right. Sometimes it isn't a loss. Sometimes it's like
Sometimes
a benefit.
come on.
Absolutely.
thank
That'll preach,
you.
but I'm not gonna preach tonight.
Yeah.
But Tiffany also was acknowledging some of the things that we were saying earlier, or that you said, Dr. Jen, about choosing to move forward. I think that's definitely a gem. We definitely got to keep that in our forefront of our minds. And yeah, and I think just more. Thank you, Tiffany, for engaging today. I don't want to dismiss any of your comments. So yeah, changing the narrative of using the word loss. Sorry for losing. That means that person is lost and won't be found again. They're coming back. Yeah, and I think, like you said, Dr. Jen, I think a good point you made was that everybody's experience is different. So being very mindful of, how people want to use the terms that they want to use or not use, or, whatever makes sense for them in their grief journey. So I think all of it's welcomed here. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Tiffany, for joining into the dialogue. We
Yes.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
We appreciate you. So we can't leave here without getting some final gems. I mean, throughout this whole thing, Dr. Jen's been giving us a lot of great tools for grief and loss. So Dr. Jen, we just wanted to ask, like, what are some care and healing points that you would recommend for those who are dealing with any type of grief or any type of loss?
Yeah. First, I would say acknowledge it.
Mm.
Acknowledge what happened, be honest about how you feel, and think about what you need. It came up earlier in our conversation about masking. I think in our society, we're not taught how to grieve. Like I said, there's no playbook, but we don't often talk about it. It almost feels like we grieve in silos. But I think one thing we can do to step out of that is just acknowledge it. Acknowledge that something has happened. Acknowledge how it is shifting, how we are feeling, how we're showing up, maybe even at times who we are. I think the acknowledgement part is so hard because you actually have to confront the reality of what is, that the person is maybe not physically in your life, not speaking to you, the thing that you cherish is no longer, available, etc. I always think, the more you lie to yourself or suppress those things, the harder this journey is going to be. Not necessarily the healing journey, but the journey of grief. So I would also say be mindful and stay away from destructive coping mechanisms. I can't tell you how many countless shows and movies I've seen where, somebody's had a death and they're like, I'm going to drink a gallon of tequila. And it's like, let's not, because you may be in pain, but you still matter. And so does
Yeah.
your well-being. And I think it's just really important to remember that, like, you're here and you can hold that pain. And there are ways to let that pain out that don't harm yourself or others.
Yeah.
And then lastly, navigating grief is a lifetime experience. So give yourself grace. We've talked about it. We've talked about this is the long run, right? You never forget the people you love. You are going to remember them throughout your lifetime, and different feelings are going to come up at different points. So give yourself grace. And use community. Talk, write it out, sing it out, express yourself. Grief doesn't have to be this scary thing that we just keep inside of our own selves.
Yeah.
We can grieve in community. So those are some of the things I want to leave folks with this evening.
I think that's real good because it's like, let's learn more about it. Like this conversation is, dropping jewels in us so we can understand grief more so that we can navigate it in a healthy way. And we know that health is wealth. That's part of wealth, and so that's really, really good, Jen. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Like, that's really good. And I look forward to, continuing this conversation for sure.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions, comments from our online viewers before we let Dr. Jen go? What we got?
The only other comment I see is Tiffany saying that she wishes she can get in and share her story.
Can she? Can we? I don't know if we can do that on this. Can we? Can we make that happen? Tiffany?
I can put the link in here.
Okay, Tiffany. So listen, we're gonna let you in.
We're gonna let you
share your story. You ready, Tiffany?
You shall receive. Let me see if I can figure this out.
We're gonna put the link while we got Dr. Jen here. Why not? So
why not? Now, how do I do
Dr.
it?
Jen, you up for it? All right. Okay.
Let me. So I'm just gonna copy and paste the link, and I'm gonna put it.
Oh, Tiffany just wrote. She said next time.
Next time.
Okay, Tiffany, listen, we ready.
Listen, I was about to put it in the chat.
Tiffany, meet us here next Wealthy Wednesday for sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Jen. We will see you next Wealthy Wednesday. Thank you for all the gems and care points that you have given us today on grief and loss. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
All right. See you both next time. Oh,
what'd you say?
She just said she can do it now.
Can you, Tiffany? What you want to do?
Tiffany, come on now.
Tiffany, okay, we're gonna let you in, Tiffany, but we're gonna give you 3-4 minutes. Okay.
I put it, Tiffany. I just put the link in the chat. So you should be able to click that and then it'll send you in here.
Okay. So while we're bringing Tiffany in to share her story, because this is what this is all about, right? This is about engagement and sharing and getting what we need, especially while we have a licensed professional with us to help walk us through this. So while we're bringing Tiffany on, I do want to let's just get into some announcements, a couple of announcements. We have already set off our Queen Care Summer series. We set it off with our open mic karaoke night. I'm telling y'all, if you missed it, it was so fun. Please come on through every second week of the month. So what is that? That's next Friday. We're going to be back with open mic and karaoke. So come on out.
It's a Friday after that.
Friday after that. Okay. Oh, the first is on Saturday. Okay.
So the second Sunday though is next Sunday. If that makes
okay. So what is this? What is the actual date on it? Let's go.
The date. Okay, the date. So for starters off for self-care and sip, you will be in the spot on July 9th for self-care and sip. For Fitness for the Culture on that Monday is the 10th of July. Arts and Craft Night is the 11th. And then we will end off the second week of the month on the 14th for the open mic karaoke.
All right. So y'all got that? All of that is happening at Queen Care at our Jackson location on 23rd and Jackson. Come on out. Let's build community and have fun. Okay. So also we do have some summer offerings. We have the Scholars Project, which is our free summer program for middle schoolers. I think we have a couple of more spots. It's going to be located at South Shore starting in a couple weeks. So go ahead and get registered for that. Youth and Business, we have a couple of spots left for our paid internship program. And young people will be learning about entrepreneurship and actually working real time at Queen Care. And that's super exciting. So we have a couple of slots left for that. And then Young Kings and Young Queens. Young Kings is debuting, y'all, okay? At the Family First Community Center in Renton. So come on out. Mondays and Tuesdays, 12 to 1:30 is Young Kings. They have a lot of great activities for our young men. And then Young Queens is Monday and Friday from, what's the time on that? 2?
Mondays and Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m.
2:30 to 4. All right. So those are our announcements. Tiffany, is Tiffany with us?
Tiffany's here. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Hello.
Don't look at my hair because I got an appointment on Friday and I didn't.
No, it's okay. We are not here to judge you.
I just stumbled upon, I don't know how I just stumbled upon you.
Oh no.
Oh no. It kicked her out.
Why? Do you know why? Or is it her phone?
I think it's because of her, whatever her connection is.
Okay, so listen, Tiffany, you're all good. We're going to have a moment for you. We're going to carve out a moment for you at our next session, okay? Wealthy Wednesday is every other Wednesday. Our next session is July 12th. And so we'll carve out a session for you. And then if you want to chat with us in between, we're all accessible. So please reach out, Tiffany. But I appreciate you for even being willing to come in and get in. And thank you, Dr. Jen, for staying on a little bit later. We'll let you go for real this time.
Thanks, Dr. Jen.
No, thank you. And thank you both for holding space for Tiffany. So hopefully she can jump on next time, not next week. But thank you both so much. And I will see you both in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll see you then.
All right.
Yes. Final words. You know, grief and loss is it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy. Whether you're grieving someone that left us physically or grieving someone that is still here. I think that Jen gave us some really good tools today, you know, to really acknowledge. I think that is really, you know, the main thing to me that's most important is to check in with your number one star player. Like, how are you really doing? Like, really acknowledge the fact that I'm hurting, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm glad, whatever it is, so that you can begin to start processing some of those emotions in a healthy way, as opposed to a way that's going to cause more detriment and could even cause more grief and more loss, right? So you all, that's my final words. Check in with yourself, be real with yourself, and really acknowledge where you're at and what you're feeling. You're worth it. So until next Wealthy Wednesday, thank y'all for tuning in live, and thank you for all of y'all that's going to watch later. We're in this together, y'all. So tune in next Wealthy Wednesday, and in between, you can watch our reruns. There's a lot of wealth in these sessions, y'all. So
literally,
health is wealth. Ta-ta. See you next time.
Bye.